Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to today's Reddit Quickie from the subreddit HFY, called Of Darkness and Monsters, written by Legal Eagle. The link to the original will be down below, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. I remember the last conversation I had with my handler. He assured me that while I was walking through the darkness right now, I would soon be able to come back into the light. All I could say in return to that was that I wasn't walking through the darkness. I had become it. I cut contact after all. There was no coming back by the point anyway. To get close to my target, I had to go well beyond the scope of reasonable criminal activity. There would be no problem. My work would never be seen the light of day. I wouldn't have a burial. My name would be never known. All I had become was a star on a wall. I had come to accept that long ago. I had no concern for myself. I had lost that years ago, along with everything else in my life except for one very specific goal: to catch a monster. But the issue with catching monsters is that we always expect them to look different. Back on Earth, we seemed to think that we could spot one out of a crowd, to somehow magically know who was evil, like they'd sprout horns and a tail, or let some self-fiendish laughter and sharpen their claws. That was the most disgusting-looking Xenos would turn out to eat babies and try to conquer the galaxy. But that was never the case. Not really. I had learned that early on. The monsters tended to look like normal people, be they human or Xeno. They had friends and family, they had dreams and birthdays, they laughed, told jokes, and acted like any normal person would. Most of the time. Most of the time. Being a monster was more about small moments, at least at first. Typically, the worst monsters had the best justifications, for the greater good was the most common, but it's deep-seated. No one wants to be the villain in their own story. We always want to be the hero, the protagonist. We do what we must because we have to. That's how it works for most monsters, myself included. I think I came to that realization when I finally forgot how to cry. I knew that I should have felt sad, that I should have cried my eyes out in private like I had before after every killing, that I should have mourned the lives that I had taken from that family just so that I could inch ever closer to my goal. But when I sat in my bunk at night, I didn't cry. I just cleaned my weapon and went to sleep. There was no nightmare, no ghosts to haunt my conscience. It was the best sleep that I'd had in months. The next day, he welcomed me to the private crew. I had become the darkness, and at that point, the only thing that separated me from him was a body count. I had killed, murdered, and assassinated. I had threatened, kidnapped, tortured, and even bombed. There was nothing that he had done that I hadn't. He had killed me just as surely as I planned to kill him. The body I inhabited was still living, but truly I was dead. The person I had been was no more. Not for months now. No one I had once knew would recognize me. What? I had become a monster, somehow fitting into the skin of a person. I had to smile and laugh as he told jokes. I had to nod and agree as he spouted his nonsense about why he did what he did. Why we did what we did. He tried to hide his evil behind what he claimed was good reasons. He made me lie to his face about how much I agreed with what we were doing. That I had thought if everyone knew the truth, then they'd believe just like he did. I had to take his praise of my actions as it was honored. To talk about what we did as if it was political, and not just the galaxy's largest criminal empire. And I took it all in and more, because I was dead, because I wanted one last thing, and I'd get it at any cost. I had no idea if the old contact had worked. I guess I'd find out soon. I stepped out onto the bridge. He was there with his entourage, humans and Xenos who believed in what they did. True monsters who laughed at his words like they were pure manna from the heaven. There would be no heaven for anyone here. I could barely feel the fires of hell flickering at my feet. I was so close. So very close. He was flipping channels as usual. He always did that when he was looking for news reports about his latest works of art, as he called them. He stopped on Channel 4. The Novaxian anchor looked worried and surprised at the breaking news, and was plastered across the screen in most urgent font that they had. Yes, it's being confirmed as we speak. The evidence in the hands of the Galpol is being used even now to start dismantling the terrorist network. What? I could hear his surprise. He'd missed the first part of the broadcast. He leaned forward now, and the others could tell something was wrong. He changed the channel, but it was on every network. They were all talking about it. An anonymous source inside a Galpol was confirming that the worst criminal empire, or terrorist network, was being taken apart even now. But they wouldn't list how they'd acquired all of this new intel. I smiled. I was right. No one would ever know I existed. Not really. The history books would just say that I died 4 years ago, and with my husband and children. I didn't survive the blast. Maybe I hadn't. Maybe I really did die back then. We're now getting unconfirmed reports that yes. The Rudian's 7 eyes narrowed as he read the information coming from the teleprompter. That he is in fact dead. Galpo ships are on their way now to supposed position of his ship to confirm that he's within the wreckage. What? He jumped up then, and then the others did too, all of them shouting and crying and screaming, in anger, confusion, shock. Whatever emotion was strongest within for a split second, but he was the only one who looked around, who turned back to see me. You, he gasped, and pointed, finally seeing me standing there with my armored pressure suit. You, he repeated, as if he couldn't believe it. Perhaps he couldn't. Perhaps he had believed me to be his loyal and dependable friend, and nothing more. Why? I figured he'd ask that. Part of me wanted to say it was for my family, for revenge, that a mother will never forgive the person who murdered her children, let alone her husband. Another part wanted to say that this was justice, for what he had done to all those people, both human and alien. Some smaller part wanted to say it was for myself, for what he had made me do. But in the end, I said nothing. I just removed my thumb from the trigger that I had pressed once I stepped into the bridge. I would not give him the satisfaction in the last moment of life of knowing why. The explosions triggered, and I felt a jolt of the ship as it was a distance and far away, as if it was happening to someone else. Instead, I just focused on him, on his face. He let the air out of his lungs right away as the ship vented into the void. His grip on the couch strong enough to keep him from going flying like so many others. He tried to reach out for me, but 10 seconds after the vent, he was out. His eyes rolling back into his head as he felt unconscious. I stood there, feeling the rest of the ship start to rupture and break apart while I remained motionless, held in place by my grab boots. His body started to go stiff and then convulse and twist before going stiff again. His body undergoing what was known as decompression sickness, the gases in his body trying to suddenly escape into the vacuum that was now surrounding his body, likely snapping his bones in the process and his body twisting and convulsing. I wish he could have been conscious for this, to feel his body to start to expand as the water vapors filled the soft tissue to make his body swell like a balloon before they could finally escape with his blood and every other liquid now turned to gas. To experience what had to be agonizing pain, as even the saliva on his tongue would boil. But he wouldn't. He had simply passed out and would never wake up. I just watched his body float down, watched things start to escape from his clothes and likely soil himself, while his blood lost all pressure and his physical being was ended after about a minute and a half. It was so short, and yet so long to stand there and watch. Everyone on board was dead now. I made sure that everyone not on the bridge was dead before I came up. And now I had just witnessed everyone on the bridge die. Except me. I had plenty of air left, and there was likely a Galpol fleet headed to its coordinates right now to verify what I told my old handler. I could very likely survive, but there was no point to it. The Xenos had no concept of an undercover cop. There was nothing for me but trial and either execution or life in prison for the crimes that I had committed to get you. No, I had known this going in, even if my handler didn't want to admit it. I thought about the gun on my hip, but dismissed it. That was too good of a death for a monster like me. Despite all the files I'd sent, I had made sure to never include a picture. I'd hoped that they'd never discover which body on this wreck was his, that they'd never be able to connect the face to the name. It was more than not wanting this to be linked back to a human. No, I didn't care about that. We knew what we were. It was simply so that his face would fade into obscurity with his name, just like I would. The face of a monster who could easily be confused with a kind-hearted schoolteacher. He had gentle eyes, average build, good teeth, but not perfect. He could have been almost anyone, but he wasn't. My hands moved to the clasps of my helmet. I paused as I prepared to open them. I didn't know why, though. I knew that I had to open the seal. I knew what I had to do. It was for every reason that I had forsaken the rescue by Galpal. It was for the same reason that I had been sent after him. Something Galpal would never understand. What the greater galaxy would never understand. In that moment, I'd pop the seal and become a star on a wall. For one reason. Humans clean up after themselves. And that, my friends, is the end of this Reddit Quickie. I hope that you enjoyed. If you'd like to support the channel or the author, all the stuff is down below. And as always, I hope that you guys have a good one, and I will see you in the next story. Cheers.